Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh. Bahasham Yahweh Shah, Bahasham Rachak, with us double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, the great millstone. Peace and blessings to the whole elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be. Wherever you may be, Shalom, Yeshua, Shalom. All right, so we're in Daniel chapter 11, and pretty much the last chapter, Daniel chapter 10, pretty much set up this chapter. Going to because it spoke about vision, which we don't really know that Daniel received a vision until you pretty much get through the chapter. But he received a vision about these times right here, going into those 6 Syrian wars, and the angel, I believe it was Gabriel, was sent to him, pretty much to give him understanding, because he received a vision, and he went on a fast for 3 weeks. Okay, for 3 weeks straight, he went on a fast. Okay, and then the angel was sent to give him a vision. So that chapter was the setup to chapter 11, and it goes into the vision here. So it says, also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. All right, so we know Darius the Mede. All right, because we spoke about because there's 2 Dariuses. When there was a Persian, when there was a Mede. So and this is Darius the Mede, so it's like which Darius this is. Which I think his name was Astyages, all right, the son of Cyaxares, which we've spoken about a couple of chapters in previous chapters, right? So it says, and now will I shew thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, all right? 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all, okay? So, now it says, behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. Now you have to remember, at some point you had Cyrus the second, all right? I think he's also known as Cyrus the Great, but Cyrus the second, who pretty much led I think it was like a rebellion, okay, against the Medes, because the Medes ruled first, and then eventually Persians ruled, and it was a rebellion that was led, and eventually Cyrus the second took power, right? So that's how the Persians pretty much came into power, okay, through a rebellion. So it says, so it says that 3 there. It says, behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, okay, and then it says the 4th shall be far richer than they all. So there's gonna be 4 kings to reign under the Persian Empire, but these 4 are after Cyrus the second. So if Cyrus the second is now in power, there's 4 that comes after him, all right, and the first, okay, the first being Cambyses the second, which was one of his 2 sons, because the other son was named Bardia. Cambyses the second reigned, and we're not gonna go, super deep. We're not gonna start pulling up, commentary. We're not gonna go to the Google and stuff like that. We're just gonna get the basic understanding of what's happening in this chapter, all right? Because there's a lot to go into with those wars, and as I've said, a couple times in previous chapters, get the basics and then build layers, all right? So you don't overcomplicate yourself, or like a machine, you overload a machine. You don't want to overload yourself, right? Get the basics and then build, all right? Come back a little bit by little bit and get more and more and more, okay? So you had Cyrus the second that was in power. So the 4 kings that came after him was first. The first one was his son Cambyses the second, okay? After that, you had Bardia, which Cambyses the second and Bardia were brothers, all right? Some didn't see him as a true king. As a matter of fact, I think there was one individual that came up. It might have been the next one. Darius the first reigned after Bardia, but someone said that he was like a puppet king, or like he was like not really the son of Cyrus the second, but whatever the case may be. You had Cambyses the second. After him, Bardia. That's 2. After Bardia, or Smerdis, Okay, some call him. You had Darius the first. All right, that's three. And after Darius the first, you had Xerxes the first. The Xerxes the first is the same one that they attempted to portray in the 300 movie. All right, remember that movie? Good movie, right? 300. All right, so that's Xerxes the first. So he's the fourth king. So when you go back to the scripture here, it says, "And the fourth shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia," because you had his father who there were because remember that between his Medo Persian Empire became known as the Persian Empire, right? Um, so they were reigning over actually the Greeks, okay, which the Greeks kind of was because going back to the movie we mentioned, all right, because some of the history is basically loosely based on real history, but the Greeks had to unify to come against Xerxes and the Persian Empire, right? So you had those Greeks that rebelled, okay, which was known as the Ionian Revolt, and so when Xerxes the first came into power, he pretty much resumed that pretty much it was a revenge, okay, because his father never succeeded in pretty much getting the revenge on that revolt, okay, of those Greeks, okay, different Grecians. So he resumed that for his father, okay, and so that's what led to the fighting there. And so if we read it again, it says, "And by his strength through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia." Okay, so and that was because of the Ionian revolt. So it says, verse 3 says, "And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will." Now, this should all sound familiar, all right, through these next few verses, because we talked about this before. So it says, "And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity." This is talking about Alexander the Third. History knows him as, or has him as, Alexander the Great. Okay, so pretty sure you've heard about him. So this is Alexander the Third, right? When you go to First Maccabees chapter 1, it mentions his father, Philip II of Macedon. Okay, and then it mentions him, and it also mentions Darius. With that, Darius was a different Darius. That was Darius the Third that he was at war with, or talking about Alexander the Third. He was at war. So that was a different Darius in First Maccabees chapter 1. So this here is talking about Alexander the Third. Also, remember we read this, and I get it here, so I'll have it on my phone. So Daniel chapter 7 verse 6 says, "After this I beheld," actually let's get 5 as well, since we're talking about it. Says, "And behold, another beast, second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it," which was those wars, all right, that we mentioned, Babylonia, Lydia, and Egypt, right? We mentioned before, okay, which I believe Lydia comes into place at some point in this chapter, but it's not really important. It's not part of the actual wars. But the king of Lydia, I believe his name was uh, Croesus. I believe his name was Croesus, but just other stuff there. So it says, "And made stand upon the feet." Actually, verse 5 says, "I had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said, they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh." Obviously, it's talking about more wars, right? So it says, conquering those territories. It says, verse 6 says, "After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard." That is where Alexander comes in, okay? "Which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl," all right? Which, in that swiftness, he conquered those particular known territories, the known world back then, in under 12 years, okay? So it says, "The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it." Right? So he ruled all those areas, but eventually the Lord took him out. And so it fell into the time of the War of the Diadoches, which was his generals pretty much vying for power, all right, of his empire, and it was pretty much split up. And I believe there were a couple of generals, I can't remember which two it was, but a couple of them actually fought over Alexander's body, and one of them finally had the chance to bring it back. just to kind of show, showcase, and like he had power, and he was like, some other stuff, back history to that. You can look that up also if you want to. But if we go back to Daniel 11:3, it says, "And a mighty king shall stand up." So we now know that's Alexander the Third, or as history calls him, Alexander the Great. It says, "That shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his prosperity." Because if I'm correct, uh, I can't remember if he had two or three sons, but they most definitely all died at war. If I'm correct, they all died at war. Okay, which pretty much his Alexander's generals had a part to play into that. Okay, because they were cutting off the line of Alexander, which puts them in a position, being his generals, the pretty much those are going to be the guys that people look to. All right, these are his generals, like these are the guys that led, and pretty much they did just that. Right, the four being Cassander, Lysimachus, which they're not often talked about. um there's another one named Antigonus, but he's not a part of the four. All right, but I always mention him because he was a strong general that had the gang up on him. But the other two are which is what this chapter is about. All right, uh, Ptolemy, okay, and Seleucus, all right. And through Ptolemy, all right, there was the Ptolemaic dynasty. They took over Egypt, all right, and then you had Seleucus, who took over Syria and a couple other territories. But we just mentioned Syria because that's the main back and forth, because the scriptures talk about the king of the north being that Seleucid Empire, and the king of the south being that Ptolemaic dynasty, and we being in Judea were wedged between, and so you would have constant wars fought between them. So troops going back and forth. The north, the kingdom, the Seleucids would have control over Judea, and then wars will fight out, and then the other side would win. The Ptolemies will have control over Judea. All right, so back and forth, they're passing through the land, getting items, getting sustenance, and whatever else that they needed. So we were just being run through, all right, by these armies that were one with one another, because we were wedged between them. So it says, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. Okay, for his, because it got broken up to his general, his wife, his children, everybody was taken out of the way. Okay, so it says, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. And that's what we just talked about, his generals coming into power, right? So it says, verse 5 says, "And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion." Now, this first king of the south here is talking about Ptolemy first Soter, which we mention him so often, right? Because Ptolemy first Soter, taking over Egypt, he's the one that sought to unify everybody by creating Serapis Christus. Okay, and Serapis Christus is where, pretty much where Jesus Christ was born. He's a fake God that was made up by a Greek general. Okay. And as many times as the prophets say that, you have these stupid churches who will never accept that. But it's okay, because it's not for them to understand and believe. But other topic, right? So this is talking about Ptolemy first Soter, the king of the south, right? Verse 6 says, "And in the end of the years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north." All right, now the king of the north means Seleucid Empire. That started with Seleucus first Nicator. All right, and so it says here where it says, "For the king's daughter of the south." So uh, now it's jumping actually in time here, because the king's daughter of the south is the daughter is talking about Berenice, and she's the daughter of Ptolemy the third Philadelphus. So this king here that's talking about the king's daughter of the south, well, that king is talking about Ptolemy. I'm sorry, not Ptolemy the third, Ptolemy the second Philadelphus, and his daughter is Berenice. And it says, "Shall come to the king of the north." All right, and at this time that is Antiochus second Theos. Okay, who had a wife named Laodice. That was his first wife, and Berenice became his second wife. All right, and there's history behind those women. Okay, you could look that up as well. All right, a lot of backstabbing and stuff like that, some evilness going on. Okay, but if you go back to Maccabees chapter 1, it says when his generals came into power that evils multiplied in the earth, because these were Greek generals, and the Greek people are who? So-called white people, or as the scriptures call them, Edomites or Idumeans. All right. So there was some nasty history between Laodice, the first wife, and Berenice, the second wife, and Berenice being the wife of Ptolemy II, Philadelphus. All right. And the king of the south at this point is Antiochus II Theos. I'm sorry, the king of the north, Antiochus II Theos. So it says to make an agreement, and it actually should tell you what that agreement is. But that agreement is marriage. All right. And that was a normal thing back in the ancient days. All right. Because if you were a king and, we're going back and forth to one another, all right, we don't really want to war with one another, but of course we're going to fight because we have to fight, and we haven't found a way to make peace with one another. So I'm going to give my son to your daughter to wed, and you're going to give your daughter to my son, and bam. Now we both have stock. It's human stock, but we both have stock in each other's empire. So we'll think twice before attacking the opposing kingdom, because now my child lives here and he or she might die. All right. So that was a very effective way to bring peace. The problem with these, the North and the South, all right, these Ptolemies and these Seleucids, is the peace was always phony. All right. They made the peace, but uh, oh, both of them always had in the back of mind that, yeah, I'm going to get these ninjas, all right, one way or another. All right. So it was a false peace, but marriages do bring peace between warring kingdoms. Okay. I mean, think about the King of not the King of Thrones, Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones. All right, that was a crazy, very, very good series until it gets to the end. It was like, it didn't end well, but we all know that it's not real anyways. But anyways, so it says, so they make an agreement. So that agreement is talking about marriage. All right, so Ptolemy II Philadelphus marries off Berenice to Antiochus II Theos. All right, it says, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. Because uh after Ptolemy II Philadelphus was dead, pretty much, you know, things like we just talked about, things went right back south, because they always had that tension, even though they would have the marriage with a world stage peace agreement, but behind the scenes they still hated one another and they wanted to get at one another. Okay, so and I've also mentioned you can look up the history between Laodice and Berenice, right? Because I think Laodice kills Berenice's children and something. It's like a crazy history there with those women. All right, but like I said, Laodice was the first wife of Antiochus II Theos, and Berenice was the second wife, as we pretty much just read there. So verse 7 says, but out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail. All right, and that is Ptolemy the third Euergetes. All right, which I believe, if I'm correct, that was her brother, one of her brothers. All right, like I said, we're not going to jump all the way back to the wiki, back and forward, commentary, all these different things there. We're just going to try to keep it basic, give you the basic understanding. All right, what's going on? All right, so that's Ptolemy the third Euergetes. All right, which, if I'm correct, that was her brother, one of her brothers. All right. So as it just read, he said, he shall stand up, one shall stand up. All right, Ptolemy third Euergetes in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail. Excuse me. It says, verse 8 says, and shall also carry captives into Egypt, their gods, because it says he shall prevail, which means he's going to win that particular war. All right, that he's going to go, because we're moving through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wars in this whole chapter, right? So, and it's lucky for not marking them, but it's okay. So it says, and shall also carry captives into Egypt, their gods, with their princes, and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold, which is obviously a normal thing to do when you're victor in battle, right? It says, he shall continue more years than the king of the north. All right. Um, and pretty much, when you're going to look into his rule, um, he ruled for, because the king of the north at this time ruled from 246. I'm sorry, 261 to 246, which is 15 years. And Ptolemy III Euergetes reigned for 24 years, which was from uh, 246 to 222. If I'm correct, that was the years there. So it says, verse 9 says, so the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and shall return to his own land. All right. So basically going back home to Egypt. All right. Because remember, the king of the south, it's not one king. These are several guys that are coming into power, and these are not back to back. You know, there's different men that reign, but they're mentioned, but the scriptures mention the main ones. All right. So the king of the south is talking about the Ptolemaic dynasty. The king of the north is talking about the Seleucid dynasty. All right. These were the 6 Syrian wars. All right. So verse 10 says, but his sons shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces. All right. So we're talking about Ptolemy the fourth Philopator now. Okay. So it says, and one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. Okay. It says, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler or choler. All right. And shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given to his hand. All right. So when it says, and the king of the south, right, at this time being Ptolemy the fourth Philopator, all right, shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with them, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. Now, the king of the north here, all right, is moving on to talking about Antiochus the third, okay? Antiochus the third, all right? And we're getting very close to a name that should sound familiar to you, okay? Which is Antiochus the fourth. History has him as Epiphanes, which means, I believe it means illustrious, but I call him what our people call him, which is Epimanes, which means madman, okay? And you always hear me call him Epimanes because he is the madman. All right. So yeah. So verse 12 says and when he had taken away the multitude, all right, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. All right. Yeah, because it's talking about Ptolemy the fourth Philopator having victory, all right, over Antiochus the third, all right? So that's why he was lifted up, his pride. He was kind of lifted up. It says, when he had taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up. That's pride, okay? Because of his victory over Antiochus the third. And he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. And if I'm correct, Ptolemy the fourth Philopator ended up dying in a revolt, I believe, because his own people, were doing revolts, and there was a lot going on, at that time. But anyways, um, verse 13 says, for the king of the north shall return. All right. The king of the north shall return and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. Okay. So it says, and in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. All right. So now when it says, those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south, also the robbers of thy people. So who is thy people talking about? Thy people are talking about us Israelites, all right, the Jews of Judea, all right, and the robbers of thy people is going to talking about Antiochus the Great, or Antiochus the Third, as we just mentioned, right? So it says, and also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. All right. So yeah, because once again, because Antiochus fourth Epimanes, right? So it says, verse 15 says, so the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. Okay. And so this is around 199, because now at this point the Seleucids are controlled in control over Judea. Okay. And that's what we mentioned earlier. All right, we're wedged between, all right, two empires, all right, going to war one with another, constantly having to pass through our lands, all right, constantly having control over our lands one after the other. Okay, and we were just being, rocked. Okay, all right, being caught in between. Okay, so it says, so the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. Verse 16 says, but he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land. So what's the glorious land? It's talking about Judea. All right, you also reading the scriptures where it says pleasant land. All right, it's talking about Judea. Okay, obviously our capital being Jerusalem, but it's talking about our area of Judea. So it says, and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. All right, now the daughter of women is talking about Cleopatra the first Sarah. Okay, I forget whose daughter she was, but it was one of the earlier people that we mentioned. All right, but she goes back to one of the earlier names that we mentioned there, of the Ptolemaic dynasty. All right, because a lot of people seem to think she was a so-called black chick. No, she's not. All right, she was a Greek. She was a Ptolemy. All right. So yeah, the daughter of, it says he shall give him the daughter of women. That's talking about Cleopatra the first Sarah, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. All right. And what we'll do is we'll stop right there. All right, give you a little bit by a little bit. Given, it's not super long chapter, but there's quite a few verses here. So this may be 3 sessions, all right, depending on how the spirit moves. But we'll stop right there, just at verse 17, and let you digest that. So Lord willing, you edify. Shalom.